to Biny Tips. Today we are going to see the chapter Control and Coordination. This is a class 10 Ncert chapter. So let's get started. So whenever you touch any hot object, what do? You tend to take off your hand, or you tend to move your hand from the hot object, right? So you can see image here where when you touch a touch me not plant, the leaves tends to droop. Okay. So this is nothing but the response to stimuli. We call this as the stimuli. Okay. So all living organisms respond and react to the changes in the environment. So stimuli means the changes in the environmental conditions to which the organisms respond. So basically this response, whatever this action, whatever here touch me not plant is showing is a response, and the touch is the stimuli. Alright. Now, what are the factors to which organisms respond? Organisms respond to factors like light, okay, light, heat, taste, then you have cold, then you have the touch, smell, pain, okay. So all these are the different factors to which organisms respond, okay. Now, moving forward, animals respond in a lot of ways. Alright. So first we need to understand who gives a response to all these stimuli. Basically all the living organisms, they respond to the stimuli or the environmental actions. Okay. Now animals respond it in a very different way and plants respond it in a very different manner. Since animals move from one place to another, that is, they show a property called as locomotion. So since they show locomotion, that is movement from one place to another place, they have a well-developed nervous system and the endocrine system, especially in multicellular organisms. Okay, so they have a well-developed nervous system and endocrine system. Now in plants they do not move from one place to another place. They don't show the property of locomotion. But plants do respond to the stimuli in the form of growth. Okay. So this growth in plants is induced because of something called as plant hormones. Plant hormones, or we also call it as phytohormones. Okay. So phytohormones is another name for plant hormones. So these bring out the responses in them. Now responses are mostly brought in the form of growth, okay, in plants. So plants do not have a nervous system. Instead, they show it in the form of growth. So you have studied in the last chapter, life processes, that amoeba senses the food particle. So a unicellular organism, amoeba, senses the food particle, and then it will start engulfing it with the help of the pseudopodia, right? So you have studied it. Now, amoeba, which is a unicellular organism, it senses a food particle and then engulfs the food particle with the help of pseudopodia. So, and then it will digest it, okay, digest it with the process of endocytosis, or also called as the phagocytosis. Now this process of sensing is also a response to the stimuli. So whether it is unicellular or a multicellular organism, okay, so all the organisms respond to stimuli. So response to stimuli is one of the characteristic property of a living organism. If it is a living organism, it definitely has to show response to stimuli. Whether it is plants, whether it is unicellular organisms, whether it is multicellular organisms, all the organisms, living organisms show response to the stimuli. Okay. Now, What is coordination? What do you mean by coordination? Very simple term, very simple and easy to understand. Basically, coordination, you can see the image here and you can understand that when you touch a hot object, whenever you touch a hot object, you tend to take off your hand. Now, why do you tend to take off your hand? Why don't you just hold the hot object just like that? You don't, because some sort of signal is being transferred to the brain through your receptors. Okay, regarding the receptors, we'll study in the next slide. So coordination means that working together of the various organs, okay, working together of the various organs of an organism. And how does it work? In a systematic manner. Very important point. It works in a systematic manner so as to produce a proper response to the stimulus. Okay, so coordination means all the systems, all the organs of your body has to coordinate with each other in order to provide a response, to the stimulus in a systematic manner. So this is called as coordination. Very simple definition to remember. You can just study this. All right. Now, coordination in animals is because of the nervous system and the endocrine system. So endocrine system basically produces the hormones and the nervous systems act with the help of these hormones. All right. So they both have to go hand in hand in order to provide a systematic response. Okay, in order to provide a proper response to the stimulus. Now, sensory organs and receptors. Now, what are these sensory organs and what are these receptors? Basically, the human beings have a well-developed sensory organs, right? We sense a lot of things that is happening around us with the help of our tongue, eyes, ears, nose, and with the help of our skin. So, there are certain specialized cells which are present in our sense organs to detect the stimuli. So these are called as receptors. Receptors are nothing but the specialized cells. They are specialized cells which are present in our sense organs, or simply we can call our sense organs as the receptors. They receive, okay, their function is to receive the stimulus. Very simple to understand. Okay, now what are the receptors present in your tongue? Basically, your tongue has receptors called as gustatory receptor. Okay, gustatory receptor. Your eyes, they have what is the function of the eye? To have or to receive the visual image, right? So they are called as the photoreceptors. Okay, then ears. In ears, we have the phonoreceptors. All right, phonoreceptors. And then in the nose, to sense the smell, we have the olfactory receptors. And then last one, skin, which is the largest organ in your body, right? The largest organ in the human body is the skin. So we have the thermoreceptors. Okay, so the names of these receptors, very, very important. Please try to remember them. All right. So receptors are nothing but the specialized cells which are present in our sense organs which receives the stimulus. All right. Moving forward. Now, these receptors basically have the sense or the capacity to receive these signals. Okay, these receptors basically have the capacity to receive the signals or the energy or the changes around us. So At a receptor, the energy sets off a chemical reaction which converts the energy into an electrical signal. So please mark it down. This chemical reaction, the sentence where it says that at a receptor, the energy sets off a chemical reaction which converts the energy into an electrical signal is called as electrical impulses. Alright? Now, whenever you touch a hot object, your skin has thermoreceptors. So these thermoreceptors are specialized cells where the energy sets off a chemical reaction. The neurons which are present there, they perform certain chemical reaction which converts the energy into an electrical signal called as the electrical impulses. I hope you have understood this point. Okay. Now, what are effectors? We have studied about receptors. Receptors are present in your sense organs. Now, effectors are present mainly in the muscles of the body and the glands. Okay, so whenever you touch a hot object, you basically receive certain signals from your receptors, right? So the receptor sends certain signals to the brain, and then from the brain it goes to the effectors. So whenever you touch a hot object, you see that you tend to take off your hand, right? So there basically your effectors are coming into action. Okay, so effectors are present in the muscles of the body and the glands. So you can see here I have clearly mentioned stimulus goes to receptor. Receptors are present in your sense organ, and then it goes to the control center, that is your brain, and then moves to the effectors. Okay. Next. What is reflex action? Very, very important point. What is this reflex action? Reflex means anything that is sudden. Okay, it is sudden, instantaneous. We can say simply instantaneous, involuntary. Okay. So reflex action is a sudden, involuntary reaction of a body in response to a stimuli. So whenever you accidentally step on a nail, you simply take off your feet, right? You simply take off your feet and you see that reflex action is a sudden, involuntary reaction. You are showing a sudden, involuntary. That is, unconsciously you're showing some reaction without being aware about what is happening. You just simply take off your feet, right? So that is actually reflex action. Now, what is reflex arc? Reflex arc means the pathway taken by nerve impulses in a reflex action is called the reflex arc. Reflex arc allows the rapid response. So this is an image that is given in your Ncert textbook. So whenever you touch a hot object, the receptors first come into action. They send a signal. Okay, they send a signal which goes to the brain. Okay, so from the brain it goes to the effectors. So a certain pathway is maintained, and this pathway is called as the reflex arc, where it produces a rapid response. Okay. Now coming to the main part of the chapter, human neural system or the human nervous system. So basically the human nervous system is divided into the central nervous system or the CNS and the peripheral nervous system or the PNS. Alright. So the central nervous system is basically of the brain and the spinal cord. It consists of the brain and the spinal cord. Peripheral nervous system consists of the nerves. Okay. We are going to study about nerves in the peripheral nervous system. So before going into these two, we have to study about something very important part of the nervous system, that is the neuron or the nerve cell. So as you all know that neuron or the nerve cell is the structural and functional unit of the nervous system. Basically it is the structural and the functional unit of the nervous system. It carries messages in the form of electrical signals, okay, which are also called as nerve impulses or electrical impulses. It is the longest cell in human body. Very important point to be noted. It is the longest cell in the human body. Okay. So you can see the picture of a nerve cell here. Basically it has the dendrites, it has the cell body, it has the axon, which is a long tube-like structure covered with the insulating sheet called as the myelin sheet. And then at the end of the axon is the axon terminal. Okay. Now, what is the structure of the neuron? So you can see that the neuron is having a cell body. This part is called as a cell body, or it is also called as the cyton. We call it as cyton. So it contains nucleus and many other cell organelles. So just like any other eukaryotic cell, okay, cell body is there, the nucleus is there, cell organelles is present, which is surrounded by branched structures called as the dendrites. Okay, these are short branched structures which help in receiving the stimuli. So whenever the nerve impulses are transferred from one neuron to another neuron, okay, it passes through the dendrites. So dendrites are the ones which receive the stimuli from the previous neuron. Okay, now axon. What is the function of axon? Once a neuron receives a signal, there is a long thin extension of the cell called as the axon, which helps in the transfer, or which helps in the transport of the nerve impulses through the cell body. So once it receives through the dendrite, then it goes to the cell body, then through the axon, the nerve impulses are transferred towards the nerve endings or the axon terminal. Okay. Now this axon is covered with the help of an insulating membrane called as the myelin sheath. So there is a chances of mechanical shock. So in order to avoid that, in order to prevent that, myelin sheath is a covering which is present around the axon. So you can see here, these are the myelin sheaths. Okay. So it is a insulating sheath. Okay. Now, you have to understand how a signal is passed. So you can see that the dendrite of one neuron, dendrite of a neuron is connected to the axon terminal or the axon end of the other neuron. Okay. So there is basically a gap. As you can see in the image provided, there is basically a small gap between the dendrite of one neuron and axon of another neuron. And this gap is actually called as a synapse. Okay. This is a microscopic gap which is present just in between the dendrite and axon of two consequent or two successive neurons. All right. So synapses are one-way valves. Okay. Basically synapses are one-way valves. That is, they send the signals only in one direction. Okay. So impulses are sent only in one directional in the form of certain chemicals. So whenever a neuron, for example, neuron A, when it is attached to neuron B, okay, so all right, so you need to understand that, for example, as you can see here, let us consider this as neuron A, where the dendrite or the axon of one neuron is connected to the dendrite of neuron B. So the signals are sent only in one direction, and these signals are in the form of chemicals. All right. So these chemicals are called as the neurotransmitters.